Hello, this is Brad Wild, and if you've been watching my last couple of videos, I've been in the mountains of British Columbia doing some bushwhacking, landing on dirt strips, and I decided that I need to move on. So I'm back in civilization and flying something other than a 172. This is the Carenado Premier 1A, and I'm going to be making my first video. I have flown it and studied the manuals and watched some videos. Part of my inspiration is a great YouTube series called Premier One Driver, where it is an actual Premier One owner and great videos of his flights around the US, using it as a business tool. So what are we going to do today? Great question. Let's go over to our map. Like I said, we were up north and now we're down in Washington State. This is the Seattle area, and we're going to be taking off from a small uncontrolled airport down here, Kilo Alpha Sierra Tango, or Astoria, and we're going to fly over to Spokane, which is Kilo Golf Echo Golf. We will be using the X-Plane FMS. That's what comes installed in the Premier One. It's not a great FMS, but it will get us to Spokane, and it's always good to try the default tools that X-Plane gives us. So if you're not familiar, or if you haven't done any programming of that FMS, you might enjoy this. If you don't want to see all the flight planning, you can just jump ahead to takeoff. So we're going to start at the beginning. So if this is not recognizable, this is skyvector.com, and we're going to switch from a VFR map to a world low map, because we're going to be wanting to plot some points here. So down here, Astoria, over here, Spokane. We're going to be starting with Kilo Alpha Sierra Tango over to Kilo Golf Echo Golf. So a flight of 275 miles and 2 hours, but that's at a speed of 110. We're going to be flying probably, I'll say 450 knots. So it's going to be a much shorter flight. And I don't do this often, but I'm going to take a look at the routes that are available, and we have one. And as I look at it, this is probably similar to what I would have taken anyway. So let's plug all this into our FMS and the airplane. Before we climb in the airplane, let's just take a look at our new purchase here. Typical Carenado detail, where you see all the rivets and nice reflections, chrome appointments along the leading edge here and around our engine, and several places for baggage. Comes with a ground power unit, and if you've purchased Carenado aircraft before, you are probably familiar with the little control panels that pop out from the lower left. This also allows you to pop out your autopilot. So let's close things up. We'll start with static elements and our front and rear baggage doors. And we've got some pilots up here. And finally our main door. So we are ready to go. I'm going to leave the power unit running. I just hope I remember to unplug it before we start taxiing. The cabin is also typical of Carenado. Nice details, tables fold out, lighting which you'll notice at night. And I have my views set up, so I've got passenger view, leading edge of the wing, another passenger view, and then in the cockpit I have, of course, the straight ahead view and my FMS out the co-pilot's window, my window, overhead panel, the power quadrant, and just a quick glance down. All right, that concludes our little tour. Let's get this thing programmed and off the ground. Let's close up our control panels. Don't need those right now. We do have ground power, so we do have power to our avionics, and we can get started with our FMS. So turn on A and B avionics. There is a pop out which we will use because it allows keyboard entry, makes things go quickly. So our status, we do have an up-to-date database. This is from Navigraph. If you want to upload or save a route, you can do that on this panel. But let's just head right to our flight plan and simply put in our origin and destination. And notice you get kind of a flickering down here in the scratch pad. If you are going to be using your keypad, you just click down there and you can start typing. Still have to click the little left and right buttons, but this does make things go faster. We don't have a flight number, but we are going to be flying direct to our first waypoint. And if we look at our flight plan, it is Hotel Echo Victor Oscar Lima. So we want to put that in first. And we will be direct. Click on next page and we can start putting in our airways. So we've got an airway here, Victor 187. We have a discontinuity because it wants to know where we're getting off, and that looks like a VOR, Echo Lima November. So that goes here. Next, we have Victor Airway 336 getting off at Echo Papa Hotel, another VOR. Echo Papa Hotel. And finally, Victor 120 to this waypoint, Echo Papa Alpha Foxtrot Yankee. Echo Papa Alpha Foxtrot Yankee. So that completes our flight plan. Now let's put in our departure, which is going to be runway 14. This is the SID, but the SID is really a obstacle avoidance SID, so we really don't need that, but we still have to click execute. So when we click on our arrivals, we have a choice of stars. So let's just take a look at what we have here. So which one do we want to use? Well, Hilly 2 is coming from the east, so that's not going to work. So hopefully Zoomer 1 will work out okay. Take a look. And this is coming from the west. And we have two transition points here. We have two VORs, one Echo Papa Hotel and one Mike Whiskey Hotel. Let's see which one is presented to us. So Zoomer 1, two transitions. We're going to be coming from Echo Papa Hotel. We're landing on ILS 03, and we have two choices here for our initial approach fix. Let's take a look at those. ILS 03. We've got Yankee India Charlie Uniform Bravo here. So waypoint. And our other option was the VOR Golf Echo Golf, which is too far down the pike for me. I'd rather start out a little bit to the west and make a longer approach. So back to our FMS, we'll select Yankee India Charlie Uniform Bravo. Everything is activated. The only thing then we're missing would be speeds and altitudes. We're not going to do anything special with our climb. So I'm going to put in 310, flight level 310. Our descent, I'm not going to adjust anything here. Make sure we've executed everything. Now when we look at our legs, you can see that we've got some speeds and some altitudes. Again, not real detailed. We just go simply straight to flight level 310. But notice all of these waypoints. And we just need to keep clicking through them and check for discontinuities, and we've got two of them. So we've got one going from Koya to EPH. So let's just take a look on the map of what we've got there. So where's Koya? You can type it up here in the upper left and find that. Go. And it's where you find the crosshairs, which is right here. Koya. And here is our VOR Echo Papa Hotel. So we don't really have anything stopping us from just going directly to that. So we can click on Echo Papa Hotel and drop it into where our discontinuity is. And now we have another one between Zoomer and Gangs, and then finally our initial approach fix. So let's take a look at that. So type in Gangs. And zoom in. And that is right here, Gangs. Now notice it's beyond our initial approach fix. So we just want to get rid of this. We want to go directly from Zoomer to Yankee India Charlie Uniform Bravo. It's a mouthful, sorry. So we can just get rid of Gangs. So delete, click on Gangs. Then we need to fill out our discontinuity with our initial approach fix, and we should be all set. Make sure you execute. And what else do we have? That gets us to our runway, and then we've got our missed approach fix, which is our VOR. So our FMS is programmed and all set to go. So it's time to fire up those engines. This is a pretty easy airplane to get started. So let's jump right in. Don't need these warning lights blinking at us. So battery is on, generators are off right now, avionics are on, of course, and we want to make sure booster pump is on auto. Before we drop down to our power console, let's turn on our nav and beacon. Let people know something's going on here. Before I drop down to the power panel, or power console, let me pull up this middle MFD because I want to watch the N2. When it reaches 12 on either side, I can add fuel to the engine, which will then spool up on the N1 side. Probably easier to do this from here, but we want to arm the ignition and turn on our ECU switches. Then back here. So we start with our right engine, and you can see it spooling up. It happens pretty fast. So wait for that to stabilize, and while we're down here, I'll go ahead and turn on our pitch switch and trim switches. And it looks like it's settled down. We'll start with our left engine. And we can put that back. And once our engine stabilized, we can go ahead and reset on the generators. And we'll just add a little ice protection because it's there. Recognition light for taxi. And we are going out to runway 14. If you click the M key on your keyboard, it pulls up this nice little map, and a lot of airports will show your taxiways. So we are headed out here. So we'll be making a little jog here, which is just fine. One last thing, want to make sure we're not dragging the ground power unit down the runway with us. That'll complicate things. Release the brakes. So this is just going to be some boring taxiing. 14. Join me, runway 14. All right, a few things to do before we take off. We'll start up here with our landing light. Then we want to make sure our altitude is dialed in. It must have been from a previous flight. We are going to flight level 310, so we want to make sure that's dialed in before we take off. I did that, so usually I like to do that before I taxi. So we are now set. We've been cleared for takeoff. Now you'll notice on our takeoff run that we get some indications on our speed tape for V1 and VR, rotate. It's a relatively short runway, so I'm going to stand on the brakes here. So I will firewall the throttles and pop the brakes. And here we go. So I'm watching that speed tape on my PFD. V1, rotate, gear up, fly the runway heading for a minute. All right, we'll fold up our flaps, clean up the airplane, and you can see the magenta line at the very bottom of our PFD. That is our route. So we've got about a 150-degree turn here. And I'm watching my speed. I want to keep it the 250 range or less than that. So it's slowly climbing. And when we get turned around a bit, stable, I'll engage our autopilot. Fly up towards that magenta line. So we've got a climb rate of about 4,700 feet per minute. Beautiful view. Pacific and the airport below us. All right, time to engage that autopilot. Engage our FMS. I think I'm going to use vertical speed here. We can lower the nose a little bit. Pick up a little forward speed. And we've picked up our route line here, the magenta. Airspeed is climbing. I'll lower the nose a little bit more. And we're above 10,000 feet, so we can turn off our landing lights and recognition lights. One thing I forgot to turn on was the strobe. I knew I was forgetting something. And that you do just before takeoff. I know my friend Steve would be telling me to check use the checklist. But why don't you join me again as we get a little bit closer to our turn east and Olympia. So Olympia's up here. We're approaching our first waypoint here, Hotel Echo Victor Oscar Lima. But we have this large sweeping turn east just past Olympia. Olympia, right below us. And we're coming up on that little dogleg turn. Get a little closer here. And then we're going to fly up to this, it's called the computational navigational fix. In other words, ATC would never assign this to you. They would assign something like this, but not this. So this is just for the purposes of our FMS and making that turn. So we've made that little jog to the north, and now we're waiting for that turn to the east. And you can see our turn slowly bending to the east. And a beautiful mountain off to our right. Let me quick show you my settings while we're turning here. So graphics, I've got high HDR, which again gives you good effects. I lowered my texture quality a notch, and it seemed to help a little bit. You've got to have anti-aliasing on at least one notch, otherwise you're going to get the sawtoothing or between the airplane and the sky. I don't feel I need any reflection detail at all. It seems like there's plenty of reflections. And I've got medium number of world objects. So again, nothing exotic, but this anti-aliasing will really kick it up. Let's check our progress here. We've got 120 miles to top of descent. I just wanted you to see this beautiful sight that our passengers are enjoying. By the way, I'm using the high definition mesh from All-Pilot X. It does a much better job of X-plane than the X-plane default. And before I leave you out the front window, all right, 2 miles to go. Let's dial in that. Our altitude, whoops, it's a long way. 5,000 feet. Whoops. And I'm figuring about 2,500 feet per minute. So vertical speed, and point the nose down. And come back on our power. Right now we are ground speed of 460. And we've got, I don't even see zoom on here yet. So we can adjust it as we go. And our landscape is really flattened out. Here in western, oh, that's kind of pretty off the left side. Okay, join me as we get a little closer to Zuma. So we are about ready to pass through 10,000 feet. So on goes the landing light. And we still have 17 miles, so I think we're going to be just fine. So what is our frequency for the localizer going to be? It's going to be 111.1. So let's take care of that. Might as well. That's navigational radio, and we're going to plug them both in. Whoops. Use the keyboard, it's easier. So our localizer is set. Coming up on zoomer. Now it's showing 9,500 feet, but I'm going to go with the chart. And I want to be 250. So that got a little bit past me. So 7 miles to go and just another 1,500 feet. And our next waypoint is going to be our initial approach fix, which is Yankee India Charlie Uniform Bravo. And just to refresh your memory, 1,000 feet to go, folks. Here is our initial approach fix. By the way, it's supposed to be 250 indicated. It'll slow down once we level off. We'll keep it around 250, otherwise it'll take us forever. So we're going to make a little bank to the left. And our next altitude is going to be 4,400 feet. So coming up on our initial approach fix, which is Yankee India Charlie Uniform Bravo. 2 miles out. And then we'll descend to 4,400 feet. There's our turn. So 4,400. Begin slowing down. So 10 miles to intercept the localizer at Juliet Echo Golf Delta Uniform. Yeah, hard to read. So vertical speed down. About 400 feet, we should be fine. So as I get closer, I will switch over to heading because I'm going to flip to a VOR so that we're ready to capture our localizer. Can't capture that with the FMS. Come back on the throttle a little bit. And notice we have our horizontal and vertical tracks for the localizer and the glide slope. So I'm watching for this to come across. And there it is. and we're at 4,400 feet. And we're 13 miles, a little over 13 miles from the end of the runway. But notice our localizer is centered. And now we're waiting to see our glide slope armed. We'll see a green GS appear automatically as we get closer, and then this star will begin to drop. So right now we're under the glide slope. We're flying into it. Notice our GS has appeared, meaning it's armed, and we should see this starting to come down. And then the nose will drop when it gets closer to this bar. And we'll probably pick up a little airspeed. So we're about 5 miles out. Time to drop that gear. And that will create some drag and slow us down. Pick up some wind noise. Coming back on the throttle. Get closer to our 120. First notch of flaps. Momentary nose up and then nose down. So localizer and glide slope are right on. And if we look at our PAPI lights, they are 2 white, 2 red. Second notch of flaps. Get a little closer to our VROUGH speed. You can see that right here. And final notch of flaps. Still right on the glide slope. All right, we can kill the AP. Inner marker. Let it settle. There we go. Spoilers. Speed brakes, I guess, in this case. Weaving all over the runway here. Speed brakes retracted.
off the runway there. Once we're clear, we can clean up the airplane. But let's take a look at that landing. Floats. Right, flaps up, and flaps retracted. And strobe off, landing light off. We'll leave the recognition light on. And over to our friendly FBO. So, first video in the Premier 1. Not a super sophisticated aircraft, but pretty easy to fly. And that default FMS seems to work pretty well. And let's shut it down. Fuel switches off, avionics off. Recognition off. We're going to ask for some ground power here. And we can open those main door, open the main door, rear and front baggage. And that ends our flight. So, thanks for joining me. Until next time, this is Brud Wild.